Oh man, I groaned big time when that happened to me. Hey dude, guys, got another Bladeslinger vlog for you. If you haven't guessed, the game I'm playing this weekend is definitely Doom the Dark Ages. And while I haven't finished the game yet, I have to say I'm really enjoying Doom the Dark Ages. Though it definitely is playing with a different deck of cards than previous Doom games. It is still Doom as I've always known and loved it, just with a really fun twist that I'm enjoying. That being said, that twist that I am enjoying is one that some people are taking issue with. And that twist I am, of course, talking about is the inclusion of parry mechanics. In recent years, parry mechanics have become something of a hot button topic amongst gamers. Some people hate them, some people really like them. Where do I sit in it? Somewhere in between, probably. For me, it really depends on the game. I don't think parry mechanics are necessarily good or bad, like any game mechanic. Whether or not a game is good really just depends on how the mechanics are used, and a parry mechanics can be a really good gameplay mechanic that elevates the game to a new level, or it can be something that brings it down. So before we talk about whether or not the parry mechanics work in Doom the Dark Ages, let's just go ahead and examine where parry mechanics came from, when they're done right, and when they're done wrong. So parry mechanics aren't necessarily a new feature in gaming. I feel like they've existed for quite a long time now. But what people generally think of when they think of parry mechanics in this day and age probably originated with Ghost of Tsushima. And, you can sort of see why Ghost of Tsushima and parry mechanics became so popular, because the combat system in this game is just excellent. Essentially, how it works is you have a typical light and heavy attack, and you also have a block button. If you hit the block button just as an attack is about to land, rather than the block just doing no damage or you taking chip damage, you'll instead be able to throw the opponent off guard and open them up to an attack. And if you hit it just as the attack hits, almost simultaneously, you'll do a perfect parry. And if you do that, you'll be able to hit with an incredibly devastating counterattack. The parry mechanics in Ghost of Tsushima are really good and super well polished. But I wouldn't say that they are obtrusive, as is the case with a lot of other games that incorporate parry mechanics. And the primary reason for that is there's more to the combat in Ghost of Tsushima than just the parry mechanics. You still have to think about your light and heavy attacks. You have the different stances that mix things up. There are stealth mechanics that you also need to consider, long-range options, chemical weapons. There's just a lot going on with the combat in Ghost of Tsushima, and that's why it was such a fun game. It's one of the best examples of a combat sandbox I have ever seen. However, after Ghost of Tsushima came out, it seems like parry mechanics have been thrown into a lot of different games, even if they're games that really shouldn't have parry mechanics. I mean, the Resident Evil 4 remake had parry mechanics for whatever reason, and that's about as counterintuitive to survival horror as you can possibly get. So, based on how I was talking about Ghost of Tsushima, you can probably fathom why, when I think parry mechanics work, and that's when, rather than being, what the entire combat system is based on, it's instead just a small part of it. Again, that's why Ghost of Tsushima works as well as it does. It isn't just, parry, 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 parry. There are other avenues of combat that you can take. Typically, when I think of a game that doesn't use a parry mechanic properly, I tend to think of games that, rely solely on the parry system. A good example would be Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown. You don't have a block button in this game. You don't even have a dodge button in this game. You instead just have a parry button. And what's aggravating about that is, while you don't have a block button, enemies do have a block button. So what that means is you'll often find yourself coming up against an enemy, a basic ass enemy at that, and you go to attack them, and the attack just bounces off their guards, and then you just gotta stand there, wait for them to attack, parry, and then you can attack them. In a Metroidvania that emphasizes motion, that can be just absolute poison. It is just a complete pace breaker, and it doesn't make for a very satisfying combat system either. It just leads to a frustrating one, because every time you go to attack someone, you just kind of feel like you're butting up against a wall. That's probably why Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown wasn't terribly popular when it came out. It did get strong marks from critics, but it wasn't one that was heavily talked about when it came out, and for good reason. It may also have something to do with the fact that we haven't heard anything out of the Sands of Time remake. That's when you lean too much on parry mechanics. If you want your parry mechanics to work, there has to be more to your gameplay than them. If it's just parry the game, then it's probably not going to be any good. But there are times when a game can be too complicated, so complicated that adding parry mechanics can actually be detrimental. Take Spider-Man 2, for example. Part of the reason the parry mechanics in this game are so frustrating is that the button that activates it also activates several other stuff on the control. So the left and right shoulder buttons, you press those in conjunction with one of the face buttons, and you'll use one of your special attacks. And all the special attacks have a cooldown, and the big part of the combat in Spider-Man 2 is managing those special attacks. But unfortunately, because given the nature of how the controls are laid out, it's not uncommon to be hitting the attack button, see an attack come that you need to parry, but because you're mashing the attack button as you push the parry button, which was the left shoulder button, instead of parrying, you activate one of your special attacks. And that can be absurdly frustrating, especially in this case, because the boss fights in Spider-Man 2 can just go on forever. This whole back and forth between the blocking, the parrying, the dodging, it just leads to some really tiring boss fights, and was one of the weaker aspects of Spider-Man 2, I would say. And really, it's just something that never should have been included in the game to begin with, because, when you think of Spider-Man, do you typically think of him parrying attacks? You probably think of him dodging attacks and then performing a counterattack, but not necessarily parrying and throwing opponents off guard. That just seems really silly. And again, with how the combat system is designed in Spider-Man 2, it just seems like they should have ruled out the parry, because it just was too much for what they had in mind. So with all that in mind, how does Doom the Dark Ages fare? And I would say pretty well, honestly. For starters, Doom is another franchise that really did not need parry mechanics. The whole idea behind the gameplay loop in Doom is that you're trying to avoid attacks rather than, intercept them. But that's also where the Dark Ages sort of mix things up. While you're still encouraged to move around as much as possible, avoid projectiles and all that stuff, there is still a benefit to taking the time to try and parry attacks. And from what I played so far, there are some enemies that are more effective to fight while you're parrying. This typically goes into, the bigger enemy types. Some of them have only open themselves up if you attack them at close range. And, it just takes monster infighting to a completely new level. So you still have to consider what weapons you're using. You still need to consider attack patterns and everything like that. But now the game is forcing you to actually get in close rather than stay at a distance, more so than any other Doom game before. And though I can definitely see ways that this could be frustrating, especially to longtime fans of Doom, for the most part, I think the parry mechanics are well incorporated into the game. It also helps that you can customize the parry mechanics independent of the general combat in the game. There's a slider that you can mess with in order to adjust how much of a window you want to have for your parry. And that's good, because if you're not a big fan of parry mechanics like I am, you don't have to put up with them. It's not like you have to play, and if you can't get that tight window to parry down, the entire game is ruined. So yeah, I think it's working pretty well. And yeah, I really wish that people would cool it with the parry mechanics. I do think they are starting to get a little overblown. Mostly because people just kind of do what Prince of Persia did and just had parry mechanics for the sake of having parry mechanics, thinking that it's making their gameplay deeper and more complex, when in reality it's just kind of cheapening the experience. So here's hoping that changes in the future. I hope, while I do enjoy Doom the Dark Ages, I would like to go back to the previous style of game that Doom Eternal had. But at the same time, this isn't bad. But yeah, that's my thoughts on the matter of parry mechanics in game, guys. And I hope you guys join me tomorrow as me and my friends cover the next game in the Sonic series, which is Sonic Riders Zero Gravity. I'll see you guys then.